Hi, it's Larry Call from Change Agent Board. I'm here today with Katie Horvath from Naveego. She's an expert in analytics in business. She's been doing this for many years and is now running a company called Naveego. We can get into some of the details of her background in a minute. To give you a sense of what this is about is we're running a series right now on essentially breaking down the reasons why analytics projects succeed and fail in business. And what we're going to talk about specifically today is something that Katie's seeing in the marketplace is a theme across a lot of different companies that they work with. And it's what happens to analytic strategies now that people are working at home. And this is not a temporary change. This is a fundamental shift in the working environment, at least in the the medium term here. So it's becoming really important. So before we get into the questions, Katie, you want to just introduce yourself and kind of what your background is in relation to analytics?
Sure. So I'm Katie Horvath. I'm president and CEO of Naveego. Naveego is all about making data ready to go for analytics. My background, I am an engineer and I'm a lawyer. I had a career as an IP attorney in patent law before I jumped into the world of entrepreneurship and using experience I gained in Silicon Valley and also in-house in Redmond area, a big company. From there, I jumped into really working with developing new technologies, and that's how I came to be part of Naveego.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for the introduction. So the first question is, what are the trends in analytics that have had the most impact on companies? Thinking about the past couple of years before the COVID environment became such a problem for us.
I think that the trends in analytics include really starting to use analytics in multiple different business units within an organization. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. We look at, the finance group, their analytics use has increased 75% in the past 3 years. Marketing, it's blown up in the past, 3 years as well, about 375% for how analytics is being used. Sales in any organization, typically sales teams that are using analytics are able to achieve their quotas 4 times faster than those who aren't. So no matter what your industry is, it's really clear that the trend has been analytics to try to give a competitive edge. And that's almost shifted now to, if you're not using it, you're behind the curve, so to speak. The other piece to it too, though, it kind of lends itself to the challenge is how best to use the data that your organization has sitting around to give you the analytics answers and competitive edge.
So as you look at the environment, then what I heard you say is that there's a enterprise challenge here, as opposed to just a departmental kind of a project, because you're using this across the entire organization, multiple functional areas that maybe have to work together on this. Is this what you're seeing in the marketplace?
Most definitely. I think that a lot of times people look at analytics as maybe just a departmental level project. And by virtue of that, and also kind of the way that we're operating these days for how we do business, no longer do we have like the one big data system in the center of the company with module add-ons for finance, for sales, marketing, et cetera. Right now, people have instead really had that decentralized purchasing power such that each functional team is buying the best of breed application that works best for them. So sales teams, for example, they want some CRM solution, maybe Salesforce or something else. Marketing will typically have their own website analytics tracking program, and the accounting team have their own software, solution for invoicing customers and the like. And so by virtue of this, we have across an enterprise data silos, separate pieces of data, and yet the data in these silos might refer to this very same person, the very same Larry Call, who is, the customer. And what we're seeing is for analytics, if you look at it, is just a departmental type of project. What's happening is the analytics teams, the data scientists are pulling data just from that business unit's data source. such that if you ask the company one question, the very same question answered by these different teams will get different results and different answers because their data is not consistent business unit to business unit.
So that brings up some challenges organizationally then around how do these projects get started and who's involved in them and in what capacity. What do you see in terms of where the involvement needs to be? Does this tend to, obviously you have data scientists and analytics experts that have to be involved in this, but do you find that there's challenges getting the rest of the organization involved in these projects?
I think, well, on the data science side, there's a huge challenge for data scientists in that statistics show that they're spending 80% of their time just trying to find the data to analyze and to wrangle it and put it in a form that it's ready to analyze. And that's a lot of time not spent on analytics. And when you think of their own job satisfaction, plus, you know, corporate, if you're paying for their high salary, you want them to be doing their best work and getting straight to those analytics. So that's a challenge to start with. From there, I think that all too often, the idea of making data consistent across an entire enterprise resulted in too many cooks in the kitchen. And everybody who's a stakeholder, who's an owner of a piece of the corporate data, all, you know, trying to sit around a table and agree on what data models should look like. And really, that was just a recipe for disaster. Most, digital transformation, data transformation projects kind of go nowhere with that sort of belief that you have to have everything agreed upon before you can even begin.
So if you look at what's going on right now, because, you know, as we said, the subject of this particular episode is the impact of work at home on analytics projects. What is that impact?
Well, now you don't have everybody sitting there together. And so we're talking about an even greater need to make sure the data is consistent, because now it could be, you know, two different people, even within the same department of a company, if they don't have access to the very same data, so that when they're answering questions and making important decisions, they need to have the same data and the same facts before them. And really what this boils down to is a lot of data management systems. Historically, the legacy systems are on-premise solutions. So you've got your data sitting there on site and the workers are sitting there on site, and IT loves that for security. Everybody's right there. But really what the current new normal of everybody working from home with the distributed remote workforce, really that just is accelerating the adoption of cloud technologies and cloud native solutions. The idea that you can lift the data from wherever it sits, maybe it's in different cloud instances and multi-cloud type of way of doing business. Is a lot of companies are using more than one cloud solution, but also they have their on-premises data. And the idea is you want to lift all of that and bring it up to the cloud such that then it's accessible to everybody who's working all across the country from their homes and all across the world from wherever they are.
So do I hear you saying then that the beginning of an analytics project now is more on the data standardization side and the IT infrastructure that the company has?
Maybe not so much infrastructure, but it definitely starts with the data. You know, the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. You know, if you have this beautiful analytics platform or algorithm and you put garbage into it, you're only going to get results that don't really matter in the long run because they're not going to be accurate. And when we start thinking about the modern analytics solutions involving AI or machine learning, we're, talking about garbage in, exponential garbage out, perhaps. And so really it's important that the data is integrated so that you're first of all making use of all of the different data you have available across an organization. And then from there, you need to have a data integration built upon master data management and data quality, such that it's cleaned up, it's wrangled, it's put in a form and format that it's ready to go for those analytics. And you want this to happen in real time. I think all too often in the past, when data scientists went to go and analyze something, they would take a snapshot of a moment in time, what the data looked like, and then start to work on an extract from there. But of course, by the time you're ready to analyze it, the data is already old. And so
Mhm.
having something that is able to stream in real time to continually update analytics is also very important.
So if you think about analytics projects right now, how does a company continue those projects then, given we're in a new era, as you're describing the challenges around being able to work together and use that data?
I think you have to have those cloud native solutions really lifting your data up into the cloud such that everybody can get it. And the whole company is operating off of the same set of facts, the very same
Hmm.
golden record of data. Is what we call it at Naveego, where you're taking in data from multiple different sources across a company, creating that golden record, and then from there we replicate the golden record into data lakes or straight to analytics. And that's really what the whole organization should be working from when they're trying to make important about the company decisions, as opposed to the past way of each department having its own sort of analytics and based on its own data. Really, that's giving inconsistent information, and a lot of executives, if they see, gosh, if only I had known this other piece, I would have made a very different decision. And so that's why it's so incredibly important, especially when we're diversified and all working from our homes, that when we're on these on strategy sessions with each other, that we have the very same facts we're working from.
So if you're looking at analytics projects that are in process, it seems like it's common sense that you'd have that golden record worked out before you got into all the time and expense of putting a departmental project together. Um, why is that not happening in all cases?
I know it does seem like it makes complete sense only to do it that way. And it's not happening, I think, because there were too many stakeholders involved to try to get the data wrangled into one place. I think also the idea of requiring an infrastructure change to make this happen. Often in the past, legacy solutions did require infrastructure change, which usually was a huge upfront price ticket, just to move the data into one way, and then trying to maintain these old solutions and add new data sources. Typically, this type of a project, it was maybe 6 months to add a new data source each time. And when you'd start on a data management project with legacy solutions, often there'd be 12, 18 months down the road with still no solution, nothing workable, and yet a lot of money spent and a lot of dedicated FTEs required just to be able to use the technology. So it was a high price tag, not a very quick return on investment or time to value for these types of projects. And so often I think people have had bad experiences in their past lives with trying to do this, and just don't want to touch it again because it was
Yeah.
not very rewarding. So to try to avoid that, they basically, let's just shortcut this and only deal with something in our department that's under our control.
Oh, I see. So it's easier to work within a department. And what's the impact of that then on the end result?
Well, fragmented analytics, and so you're only basing
Mhm.
your analytics on one data point and not a complete set.
Yeah, you'd said that earlier. So if you look at the way this shows up in the organization, how do people know that they have a problem with the golden record that's causing these analytics projects to stall out and eventually fail?
One way is you see duplicates of a customer, for example, or of a
Mm.
vendor, where it's more than one entry for the very same entity or human. And each of those entries is going to have usually slightly different information. It should all be just in one place. Also, you might see inconsistencies. A classic example in a sales context would be the sales team shows the customer having a number of purchases, but yet the accounting team shows a different number of purchases were invoiced. And so right there's an inconsistency when you're trying to answer analytics questions like, what is the lifetime value of this customer? Or what should we try to target market to them next based on purchase history? If you
Mhm.
can't figure out what that is internally, you got a problem.
So if I'm a business leader, am I aware of what's causing that problem? or am I in the dark because I'm not an expert in analytics field?
Usually in the dark. I think a lot of people who are, C-levels are, they'll look at their dashboard and they want their dashboard and they understand that the dashboard is going to be important, but they start to not trust the dashboard and start to blame it. Because they're seeing results that just don't make sense. And it's not the fault of the analytics platform that the dashboard has. It's the data feeding into it has errors in it. And so of course your results of analytics are not going to make any sense.
Why wouldn't the analytics experts in the organization be communicating that to their executives?
I think that sometimes they do, and they're not heard. Other times, it's maybe more of a political thing where people don't want to admit to having errors with data that they're in charge of. Sometimes that can be an issue, but usually it's a known problem. It's just nobody knows how to solve it in a way that they can afford to.
Oh, I see. So people are open to the right, or some people are open to the right solution, but these symptoms, these issues show up as symptoms, and they don't really understand what the underlying cause is. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, often people have a dire need for a golden record, but yet they don't understand that that's what they need because they're just seeing analytics results that are cattywampus.
So if you solve this problem and you're in a competitive set, is there any way to kind of understand what the impact of that would be? Or does it just sort of vary based on the analytic project?
I think it varies based on the analytic project. You can look at it two ways. You can look at how much is a solution saving me in terms of manpower and time spent on trying to track down data, trying to wrangle data, but also just trying to figure out what is true when there's an error someplace because things aren't adding up and they're not consistent. So there's that, lost time and the extra expense of just trying to fix things. So really you want a solution to your data that's going to save you cost and save you time and save you money.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of it is, what type of piece can drive revenue for you? And so sometimes, the idea of these projects, you could measure them in terms of revenue that has increased by virtue of having your data ready to go and analytics working.
Well, it sounds like it's fairly easy to quantify the value of solving the underlying cause then.
Yes, an example I'll give from a healthcare customer we had is they were having billings to insurance bounce back. And the reason why things were bouncing back and their claims not getting paid was that the data they were submitting had missing fields in it that were required for reimbursement. So it wasn't that the claim wasn't one that was going to be reimbursed, it was just a data error. And it caused them a lot of time and expense in having to correct these errors and deal with not getting paid right away for those claims. And so that was a great quantifier because when we came in to assist with the project, all of their bounce backs decreased down to negligible. And so that was a huge cost savings to them.
So with the Golden Record Challenge, if you can measure the business impact of it, if people understand this then, so they've gotten to where you are and what you've just talked about, and they're able to solve the at-home impact of making it even harder, what else would cause someone to not be able to successfully implement a solution?
Well, I think it's, political buy-in and culture across an organization. That's what people say is the number one reason why digital transformation projects fail. And, that was one of the things that Naveego, we knew about. And on our team of brain power, we have folks who have been in the services industry who have been trying to help organizations create data models and figure out the best warehousing or data lake solutions. Realizing that, the lack of adoption of all of the cooks in the kitchen is really what's going to stall, if not completely prevent success of these projects, we designed our technology to completely eliminate that, where we can get in, connect to a data source and start building a golden record immediately. And from there, once you have something to work from, you can tweak it and change it so that you have the golden record, including data that you want to have, making sure it's exactly what you need for your analytics. But, the idea of we can't even start to build it until we all agree upon it, we've thrown that out the window, because that was really the biggest challenge to success.
Do you find then you need a champion? Do you normally start there when you get a new opportunity for a new client? There's somebody who's going to push this through the political, cultural infrastructure in the company?
It really depends on the structure of the organization. I think one of the good things that came out of GDPR was the idea of having that chief data officer, one person responsible for data, for governance, compliance across the organization. So that can be our champion for sure, of getting something in place. For organizations that don't have that role as clearly delineated, sometimes it's IT department who are looking for ways to map new data sources faster, integrate data, looking for technical solutions. And so sometimes we get, the tech team leading the sales call, that when they recognize, kind of the diagnosis for what under the hood is needed to solve the business challenge. But other times it's the business itself saying, wait a minute, I need to have analytics and this is not working. I'm not sure exactly how to fix it, but I know that there's a big problem. And so we do a lot of connecting the dots from technology to the actual end business use case and problem.
So does there typically need to be an executive sponsor where there's a strong enough business problem where you have to connect the analytics champion's needs with the business needs before anything gets fixed?
Typically, yes. I think an executive sponsor. That being said, depending on how large an organization is, sometimes the director level it can be managed there as well.
Are there any concrete steps that you could recommend to somebody who's listening to this, where they are frustrated because now they're understanding, or maybe they already did, it's a golden record issue, it's a data issue, we're all working at home, so it's getting harder to keep these projects moving. What tangible steps can somebody take to get where they need to get?
Well, I think first of all, you need to think about who should be involved in this project, in making things more efficient for getting data into the hands of analytics, into those who need it. And the very first piece of that is making sure that your solution involves the data stewards, who are the people in your team who understand the content of the data, and they can spot when something's not looking right. That's different from IT. Usually these projects are led by the IT department alone, but IT, they understand the structure, the network, they understand what the database looks like, but they're not the best position to be able to assess if the data content has gone awry. So that's kind of the first consideration. Of course, you need to make sure IT is involved and that a solution completely, is secure and meets all of the security needs for IT as well. But I think that the very first thing you need to do is to integrate your data. But you don't want to just bring data in from multiple silos into one place, like a data lake, without having it cleaned up. I think a lot of times people make that mistake. They just move data from one place to another, or from many places into one place, and think that they're solving the problem of lack of having the data integrated. But at that point in time, with most data lakes, the data is not usable yet. And so it's really important that your integration solution includes a master data management and data quality component to it, such that it's going to be cleaned up. You're going to eliminate the errors, the duplicates, and get that golden record ready to go. From there, it's also really important to have governance so that you know lineage. So if you have data that's used in one place, you can track to see who else is using it, where else is it going to, and where did it come from across the organization. And that's extremely important for compliance. You think about, I mentioned GDPR, but that or California privacy laws, where there's that new right to be forgotten.
Mm.
If you get a notice that a customer wants you to delete all of the data and you have 45 days to do it, trying to find it across an organization is near impossible unless you have that governance, that lineage, that golden record in place so that you can find each and every instance where it is to make sure that you are able to delete it.
Do most organizations have one person that can fulfill that role across the different areas, as you discussed, that need to work together to be able to make the project work?
No, not usually just one person, but compliance, sometimes it's part of legal.
Yeah.
And so then you get the lawyers in there trying to figure out what to do or where to find the data. And so it's a combination of legal plus IT trying to find it too. And then from there, it becomes a mess really quickly when IT is trying to chase down every data scientist and every analytics solution extract platform across the company.
Do you have any examples that you can share about how this shows up in various sorts of companies?
Sure. So a healthcare system on the East Coast, one of our customers, and they actually were one of the top 20 hospital systems impacted the most with COVID patients in our country with the initial outbreak here. One of the things that they were working on for analytics prior to the COVID pandemic was trying to figure out if patients followed through on prescribed medication as well as treatment. And the healthcare system recognized that if it was a patient, going to a physical therapist in their hospital, they would know about it. But anytime somebody went to a third party, a different outpatient facility or just, completely separate facility, they didn't know. They didn't have any way of tracking. And so for purposes of making sure that their patients would, be a healthy population and they could figure out what treatments were working versus not working, they had the desire to be able to integrate data from third parties into the hospital system data. And so with that problem came, okay, how are we going to find out, what people are doing apart from trying to, contact each and every possible third-party treatment center? Well, that didn't make sense. So it was more so, let's look at the insurance claims to see, the prescriptions, are these being filled? And also then from there was the need to integrate the national provider database that the government has for doctors who are registered and able to practice, because often they were associated with more than one facility as well. So it was a data integration challenge that we were brought in to bring in data that they owned as well as data that they didn't own from third-party sources to create a golden record such that they could track whether or not treatment was followed through upon. And the ability to be able to do this and have data in real time became even more critical when we're having a fast-moving situation like COVID and trying to figure out which treatments work the best in our people. When we're looking at our numbers, the people who actually are following the treatment that's prescribed is the only way to know whether or not a treatment really works, as opposed to people who might say they're doing something and not doing it, and really impacting the analytics numbers for that.
That's amazing. So that's a really serious problem.
Yeah, life or death problem.
Major healthcare outcomes.
Yeah, life or death
at stake. Yeah, it's not just an economic challenge.
Yeah.
Is this something, golden record challenge, something you see across the board in business, or are there specific trends or industries that are ahead of others?
Most industries need this. The idea of a golden record, I challenge somebody to find an industry that doesn't need it. I guess it would be some industry that only has a single data source in their company, and that's it. But healthcare is definitely involved in analytics. Healthcare, their primary goal, of course, is patient care. So analytics is going to be second to that always, and that's understandable. I think highly regulated industries typically have a large need for this. Those industries sometimes are a little bit slower to adopt new technologies, utilities, oil and gas, things like that. But really, if you look at who's trying to be on the edge of it, marketing companies are trying to be on the edge of it, as well as analytics companies, of course, because they want to be able to sell their analytics. And so they recognize that having data from other sources to enrich what they're able to provide to a customer, as well as make best use of their customers' data that they already have spent money on collecting, that's maybe sitting unused in a data basement someplace. Making best use of those assets that they already have. That's very important. And financial services sector, tends to try to be on the more cutting edge side of use of analytics. But that being said, even industries like insurance, we have a lot of success with helping in the insurance industry, where each and every cost savings you can have, each little piece really makes a big difference.
So are there questions that people can ask themselves to determine if the issues they're having are golden record problems?
Well, I think the first one is, do you trust your data? If the answer is anything but yes, you need a golden record.
So that's a simple, easy way to determine where the issue could be.
Right.
So if you say, I don't trust my data, then what happens next? What should you do?
Well, from there, you need to, figure out, well, why do you not trust your data? Is it that depending on where you get it from, you have different answers, you have different data, different sets of the truth, different facts? And that's just, a glaring need for a golden record. But the other piece to it too is my data in a form that I can use it today? Usually the answer to that is no. And people don't necessarily associate that with the need for a golden record. If you have your data analytics ready in real time, you're good to go. Anything less than that, then there's a need for better integration and better data management, including a golden record.
Once you understand that that is the problem, because you've gone through this sort of an analysis and you've taken some steps to move forward, where do you get involved? Where does Naveego and your team start to intersect with the company?
Really, the very beginning, or we can come into a project and save it late in the game or anywhere in the middle. Ideally, we'd be there at the beginning, because our solution, we connect to a new data source in a matter of a couple hours or a couple minutes, and the golden record's built in a few hours. And we're integrating anything and everything, all sorts of forms and formats of data, putting it into one common data model, one common language, such that that is ready to go for all the data to be used for analytics. And so we'll come in and we'll train people on how to use our software platform. We do a software as a service model for that. And we also do services too around it. If people have an unusual data source that they don't have a connector for, we can build them usually in a day. And we do have a library of connectors for commonly used data sources, so that people can start up by using our platform on their own. We are, happy to help as much as requested, or as little as requested if folks want to get going on their own. I will say that we've built our software platform to be self-service for a non-technical user too. And so as much as the technical user benefits from time savings on auto mapping and profiling data and being able to find sensitive data before it's moved or touched, and the time savings that we bring to them for that. As much as that's true, we also have other customers where it might be the accounting team is the primary user of our platform, because it's built so you don't have to know anything about computer programming, coding, or what databases look like to be able to use it. So
it sounds like the solution is the simple part to fix it, whether you're working at home or not. The solution still is easy enough. But what I'm hearing you saying is the hard part is understanding what the problem is, and once you understand it, mobilizing everybody to make a decision to put a solution in place.
Yeah, it can be. And that's, why our approach is, let's just start with one area. We don't have to try to solve an entire enterprise data needs all at one time. Yes, we can do that, and sometimes that's what we're called upon to do from the get-go. But usually, it's let's start with one particular problem we're having in the business that we can boil down to data being feeding into the problem, and then from there, often it's almost like a land and expand, where a customer sees what we're doing with a different department, and so then they want us too, and so pretty soon we're involved in different analytics projects across an organization. And for them, you'd be surprised how often it's the same golden records feeding multiple different projects, and people didn't even necessarily know that the other group had data that they could benefit from.
So you have to start often with a proof of concept, and then once people see it and you understand what's going on in the company, you can expand this out.
Yes, that often happens.
Okay.
We do, and yeah, we regularly start with proof of concept, so we can, really better dig in and understand what the challenge is in the business need. Making sure that it makes sense. I think that our product being cloud native, it's one of the keys to it as well. There are only 2 products on the market that are cloud native. Others had these old on-premises legacy solutions that they decided to add a cloud feature to. Or make cloud available. That's very different from being architected from the very beginning to be cloud native. What it means is that we've done all of the heavy lifting for customers on trying to connect data sources. We have done all the heavy lifting on being able to understand what your data content as well as the data structure looks like. And things are connected to our platform with very quick API connectors. There's no customization required. A lot of solutions require a lot of custom code to be created and maintained over time. And that's really where we stand out as being different. And so based on that, it's a lot easier to get going and at least to try a solution. And for a POC, we see much higher rate of success than others do, because we're able to have that really quick time to value, where we'll do a POC for 30 days. And at the end of that, we've definitely proven how much we're saving the organization or driving revenue for them.
So is it possible for virtually anybody in the company to work directly with you to do a proof of concept without having to bring in a lot of different teams to get something started?
It is, as long as they have permission to get their data. And
right.
So whatever data sets they have available to them, we will definitely, make that into data that's usable for analytics.
Okay, sounds great. Well, Katie, this has been really informative. What I take away from it is the solutions are not that difficult, and it can happen quickly. It can happen across any aspect of the organization. But that, as often is the case, people can be the barrier to their own success. And the work at home doesn't sound like it's really that serious a problem if there's a strong enough motivation to get the results that are needed.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to add before we conclude?
No, I think that, it was interesting because when we were all going into work from home with our shelter in place orders, Naveego, I was really proud that we moved the company to 100% work from home prior to that being mandated. And I figured out of anyone, we're kind of best equipped to do so because our technology that we're building is cloud native, and our way of doing business has been really relying on cloud native way of interacting. And so it was really seamless for us to do so. And I felt so incredibly fortunate because I have seen a lot of other businesses that didn't yet have tool sets and solutions for enabling a remote workforce, whether it's Zoom meeting they needed or other things. But a big piece of that is not being able to get to their data when their team is not sitting on site. And so that's just a way that, I'm really hoping to be able to help a lot of companies right now.
Yeah, that's great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you regarding work at home transition challenges or getting analytics projects started or back on track, how do they find you?
Well, our website is naveego.com, and on there, there's a lot of information, including contact information for tech, for sales, that kind of thing. Or if they just want to shoot me an email directly, more than welcome to. My email address is my first name, Katie, Katie, .Horvath, my last name, Horvath, @naveego.com.
All right, great. Thanks, Katie. So if anybody wants to talk to me about Change Agent Board, if you want to, you have some expertise in analytics, you want to join on one of our episodes as a board member, you can reach out to me, larry@changeagentboard.org, or just respond through our website, changeagentboard.org as well. So thanks again, Katie. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and all the great information.
Well, thank you very much for including me, Larry.